I guess the biggest difference between the Stanford-Binet and the WIPC3, which is as the ERB administration administers, is that WIPC3, the sections that are pulled from the WIPC3 do not constitute a real IQ, meaning that the way they administer, the ERB administers this test, is effectively an achievement test. So whereas the Stanford-Binet is really an IQ test, and it's given as is by psychologists who have, years and years, 20 years of experience administering this test to young children. So why is this test harder, and why is it more difficult to prepare for? One is that while this test has manipulatives that are child friendly and so forth, it really has a lot of transitions. So they will do like 2, 3 of one item. They'll do like 2, 3 puzzles, and then they'll move on to vocabulary. They'll move on to something else. So it requires a child to not only stay focused, but deal with really tough transitions. And the second part of it is that it accelerates pretty rapidly in content. So that extra few points really make a big difference. But to get to that extra question is a huge leap for a child. So because of that, we see a lot of parents who say, oh, my son or daughter missed the cutoff by a few points. But those few points are actually quite critical. So it could mean the difference between a child who can add 6 plus 7 in his head versus a child who can count. So the skills that are required for that extra question are quite big. And the third is it's actually one of the tests that I think the integrity should be maintained for, because it's been used for a long time. There's a lot of data for it. I mean, the Stanford-Binet 5 is relatively new, but its predecessors, like the Stanford-Binet 4, and the test's been around since the beginning of this. I don't know. I think Droid, and it goes way back for a while. So what we do is what we recommend when parents try to prepare for that test. We say it's okay to work with your child on a few sessions to work on the Stanford-Binet, get them comfortable, work on those skills. But to get them to actually guarantee that they're going to pass the Hunter bar, the innate ability of the child and their ability to work through these transitions and concepts and absorb them and apply them really requires actually a child who has that ability. The innate ability makes a big difference. So we try to err on the conservative side, and when we do an assessment, we try to tell parents that, you can try for Hunter. We can, integrate this into the curriculum, but I would not recommend your child to do, 15 sessions on working for Hunter program, because generally that does not work if they don't have the innate ability. So that's a test that actually we have seen now over the last year. We still have limited data because the children who have passed that already came to us pretty strong. So, but when we see a child who's really strong, that's when we say, let's definitely do some tutoring. So we try to you can make a few percent points difference, but you're not going to make, a 10%, 15% difference. I mean, 6%, I think it was written in your book that children, who take the test in 3-month intervals can improve it by 6%, but you're not going to see a 30% improvement on that test. So we believe that that's one test that, that I do think that children do end up where they need to be. So I guess there's been a lot of discussion lately, and I've been talking to the media quite a bit about, the DOE is looking for a new test for the instead of the OLSAT, because they find that the test is weak in certain or whatever. There's a lot of criticism about the test, and it's missing some kids, and it's not identifying the right kids. But what we look at is what's tested on the OLSAT is very core skills that are tested on most of the other tests. Stanford-Binet tests those, ERB tests a lot of those. So if they change the test, it's really not a big deal, because there still need to be some sort of a test. As long as there is going to be some sort of an evaluation criteria for the gifted and talented programs, children are going to have to go back to the 7 core, 6 core skills that they need to know, going back to verbal expression, reasoning, quantitative reasoning, any of the visual spatial, all these core skills will be tested. A 4-year-old is never going to be tested on reading comprehension. So what we tell parents is that don't worry about the next test. It's still the OLSAT this year. And Bracken, we will know more, and as we find out more, we'll adjust. I mean, tests change all the time, and that's really not a big deal. So they don't really need to worry about that. But what they need to worry about is making sure that their children possess the core skills that they need, regardless of what the next test may be. So that's it.